evening, family, friends. I appreciate you coming out for this very important topic. My name is Felicia Hill, and I am the chair of the NAACP Health Committee. And my dad did pass Saturday. He was 92 years old, and that was his birthday. So that being said, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mrs. Caarol Prewitt. She's going to facilitate it for me. But I also wanted to welcome my guests, each and every one of you, and thank you so much for your willingness to serve and share and enlighten us on mental health issues within our community, especially dealing with depression in our youth. So, Mrs. Prewitt.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is so good to see you all. Could I ask you to do just one thing that I do with every group that I speak to? Would you please stand and say hello and give the person to the right of you a hug or a handshake, and the person to the left of you a hug or a handshake? Thank you so very much. When we start to talk about the root of mental health issues in communities, sometimes when we do our research and all of our studies and our reports, it basically goes back to how we love and nurture one another. And this evening I'm going to introduce our panel members. I thank them all for being a part of this and making sure now. You are Matt. Thank you. Making sure that we educate, inform, and inspire you to help meet the needs of all of the people in our community. Tonight we're focusing on mental health issues and our young people. And they are desperate. They are in a desperate state right now. My heart aches when I go into the schools to deal with them and do any consulting. But after you leave here this evening, I'm sure that you will have some tools and be educated just a little bit more on identifying the needs of the young people and the mental health challenges that they're actually dealing with today. At this time, I'm going to read off a couple of bios so that you will know who we have with us this evening. To my immediate left, we have a longtime colleague and friend from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Mr. Sam Pride. He served in the United States Air Force for 24 years, retiring in 1986 at the highest enlisted rank of Chief Master Sergeant. Yes, thank you for your service. As long as I've known Mr. Pride and his lovely wife, they have always been involved with the youth at the chapels, whichever church they were at or communities. He currently serves as one of the ministry leads for 6 chapel-wide ministries, including the Boys to Men program at the Prairies. Some of you may know the Prairies as Chapel 3, if you've ever visited there. This mentoring program is a very, very positive program through Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and they develop and nurture the young men, help them with their challenges. But Mr. Pride has always been involved as an advisory committee member, coordinator for the chapel-wide Protestant men of the ministry of the chapel there, and a member of the gospel service male chorus. He has an email ministry where he advises church members of chapel activities and information, also education and job opportunities. He enjoys being active in the local community and is committed to his work in the chapel services at Wright-Patterson. He's married to the former Mary Gums of Duluth, Minnesota. They have 2 very, very lovely children, and they only have 8 grandchildren. So you need to be a good mentor, don't you, Granddad? Mr. Pride and his family currently reside in Dayton. Next to Mr. Pride, we have Sister, may I call you sister, or how do they call you, Reverend, or? Oh, okay. Reverend Muriel Suttles, correct? Muriel earned her master's in social work from the University of Cincinnati and is a licensed social worker for the state of Ohio. She has over 15 years of experience working in a variety of settings with diverse clients. Muriel currently works as a mental health therapist in the local public school system, and I understand that's Dayton Public and Trotwood, if I remember, and Trotwood, okay. Next to Muriel is someone that I recently met, and I hope I still have it here. Dr. Stephen Nifley, K is silent. Dr. Stephen Nifley, and I was so excited to meet him because I didn't know that we had a young psychologist at Wright State. You know, I have been looking and working on other committees, and when your name was given to me, I'm like, no, I don't know him. We have to get him out to speak. He is an assistant professor at Wright State University in the School of Professional Psychology. He is also a board-certified licensed child psychologist in the state of Ohio. He received his doctorate and master's degree in clinical psychology from Spalding University, where he specialized in child, adolescent, and family therapy. He completed his postdoctoral training at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Nifley also has a master's in public administration from Wright State University. Dr. Nifley's area of expertise is research and clinical work with Black males. Specifically, his work focuses on understanding and developing culturally appropriate interventions for Black male psychopathology, as well as barriers to academic success for this population. He has written 4 books on Black male mental health, Black males and the criminal justice system, and academic achievement. And are we able to purchase those books here locally or on Amazon? And share the titles when we get to you before the evening's over, please. And our next person is Mr. Matt Turner. Matt is a certified yoga teacher with the Dayton Yoga Club. He uses yoga as a tool to manage stress and anger. And you know, I have a colleague who uses that in the school system out of state, and it has proved to be very, very beneficial in getting those grades up for the students. He has worked with youth in the juvenile detention and has also worked with military veterans suffering from PTSD. Matt is currently pursuing a nursing degree from Sinclair Community College. How much longer do you have to go, Matt? Okay, wonderful. Okay. And our last person is a longtime sister friend of mine, many years, Caarol Dokes, who is from St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, a graduate as a professional nurse, and during her career, she practiced in many nursing areas such as public health, community health, methadone clinic, and school nursing. She also worked as a mental health nurse for New York State. Mrs. Dokes was commissioned as an officer in the United States Air Force Nurse Corps and worked as a mental health nurse and obstetrical, one of those pregnant lady nurses, right? And thank you for your service also, Caarol. Following her military service, she worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs as a mental health nurse, nursing supervision and emergency room nursing in California and in Dayton until her retirement. Since her retirement, she has volunteered for such agencies as the American Red Cross, as an instructor and health and safety chairman at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Word's radio reading service, where she produced and hosted a senior program, parent advisor for Protestant Youth and Vacation Bible School, again at the Prairies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, ESL tutor, organized and facilitated Black History programs in the local community, and was an Air Force marathon volunteer. She describes herself as a family and disability advocate, which she is, and a health coach, which she is. She is a member of PWOC of the Miami Valley Veterans Women's Collaborative and promotes literacy and reading as an independent consultant. And if you would, just give them a big hand. This subject is very near and dear to my heart, as part of my background is I was also a mental health counselor when I was on active duty in the Air Force, and then afterwards as I traveled around the world and decided to go into teaching and then counseling again, and then I became, for some reason, an aide to legislators. I do not like politics, but I do believe in adding to the value of the quality of life of all citizens. And I think that's why I ended up in that arena. I was formerly an aide to Congressman Tony Hall for almost 8 years, and then an aide to then former Senator Fred Strayhorn until he left and then went back to the House. But my passion is with our young people, making sure that they're nurtured and get to the point where they can be change agents in the community. And the problems they're having that I see when I go into the schools to consult now, and my company, I consult in the areas of civility training, etiquette and business protocol, and I write grants for nonprofits when I have time. But it hurts my heart when I go into the school system and the kids are as apathetic as they are. And that gets into the way of them believing in themselves to be the best that they can be and make the best grades that they can make. And we are depending on them to be the best citizens they can grow up to be. So I would like to start, since the focus this evening is on depression, that's what was shared with me. Muriel, or any of you, what is the definition of depression?
What is depression? Everyday blues, sadness, or a short-term depressed mood, which is common. And many individuals may cope with these feelings without significant impact on their everyday life.
Once again, my name is Stephen Diffley. I think one of the things to know, since we are talking about Black males, specifically in depression, is that for Black males, it often presents itself as irritability and anger, right? So anger is a secondary emotion, which means that there's always something underneath it. So when we're looking at our Black males, we oftentimes see them as angry, but really they might be experiencing some sort of depression.
Good evening. After being introduced, one thing I want to say, it's such a blessing to be here, just to participate in a function like this in the city of Dayton. I'm at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's where I spend the majority of my time. When I found out about the subject, I did a lot of research, and I just wrote down a couple of things I'd like to pass on. And one thing that I found that was really strange, it says it's natural to feel down sometimes, but if that low mood lingers day after day, it could be a signal of depression. And major depression is an episode that lasts at least 2 weeks and is serious enough to interrupt your daily activities. Depression is not a sign of weakness or is a negative personality. It is a major public health problem and is treatable. And the problem I have, and I think that just mentioned here, sometimes people exhibit anger, people don't realize that they could possibly be depressed. And that's one of the things that it is treatable. If it is diagnosed properly, it can be treated. And so when you see somebody who potentially has depression, the main thing is to get them to a hospital, I think.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd have to break because I was not looking at my agenda like I should have been. Mr. Matt, I believe, since we're talking about being energized and being focused and being balanced, you are to do one of your yoga exercises with us?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name's Matt. I'm from the Dayton Yoga Club. So yoga may seem a little strange maybe for some people who aren't related to it. The word yoga actually means to join. And it's actually about joining movement and breath together. And so today I'm just going to teach a couple breath exercises. As I think everyone here knows, we live in a very stressful world. And throughout our day, we're confronted with a lot of stressful situations, and we don't always know how to process that stress. We have a habit of swallowing our stress. And that can manifest in a lot of physical ways, because as we go through our day, if we're constantly dealing with stressful situations, not processing it, just pushing it down, that can actually cause physical symptoms. You can actually get headaches, obviously. Some people carry their stress in their stomach. You can deal with stomach pains, neck pains. It lowers your immune system. They've done studies where being stressed and not knowing how to deal with that stress will actually cause you to get physically ill. And then what happens sometimes, as we keep bottling up that stress, at a certain point, like a bottle that just gets too full, you have to let it out. And sometimes it comes out in not helpful ways. Anger, acting out, and depression. All those kind of tie together. So sometimes if we have these techniques that help us deal with these stressful situations, they can help us deal with that stress and avoid those secondary symptoms. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is just a couple quick things. First, I'm going to give you a little analogy. My mom, who I think is probably the smartest person in the world, she gets smarter the older I get. She has always told me that we're all caregivers, and if we're not, we should be. And much like you can't be a good caregiver unless you're taking care of yourself first. And sometimes we feel selfish about that. We always think we need to take care of everybody else but ourselves. But if you're ever on an airplane and those oxygen masks drop down, they always tell you to put it on yourself first. You got to make sure you're in good health first before you can start taking care of everybody else. So self-care is very important, I think, especially as we try to outreach to community, younger generations. We need to make sure we're in a place that's healthy before we can help others sometimes. So this is just a couple quick exercises. If you're at your job or you're just in your car and somebody cuts you off, a couple minutes of breath, and I'm going to show you a couple exercises, can sometimes help release that stress or just, let it go, So first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask everybody to take a big breath in, and we're going to sigh it out heavy. So big breath in. One more big breath in. Another big breath in. Already you should feel your heart maybe slowing down, maybe a little more oxygen, maybe even a little buzz in your head. It's because you get a little more oxygen going on. Okay, second thing, do a nice hard swallow. Just swallow that. That loosens up your facial muscles. Sometimes when we get so stressed out, our jaw clenches. And that cuts off circulation to our brain. It causes migraines. So just give yourself a nice big gulp sometimes. Sometimes that releases your face. Okay? Now the second thing I'm going to show you, and this is if you have a moment or two in your job or in the car, maybe in traffic, maybe there's an accident, you can't get through, you're running late for work, your stress levels start to build, your heart rate goes. So this is we call this 3-part breath in yoga, okay? So imagine your lungs as a container that's separated into 3 parts. And we're going to slowly fill that container in 3 parts, okay? So, everybody, big breath in. Exhale completely. Inhale just a little bit, about a third of the way. Stop, hold for just a second. A little more inhale to the second part. Stop for a second. Inhale all the way in. And big exhale. Let's do that one more time. Big breath, a little breath in to the third way. Hold. A little more, maybe 2/3 of the way. Inhale all the way in, filling your lungs and chest as much as you can. And exhale. Those are some quick, simple steps that you can do at work, in your car. Sometimes it's really good for kids. A lot of the educational systems right now are doing these breath exercises, especially young kids. They come in and they're kind of wound up, full of energy, maybe a little sugar. And so a lot of classes now are starting with these breath techniques. It helps you find centering. If you're in school right now and you're about to take a big test, sometimes these breath exercises will center your mind a little bit. It'll help you release a little bit of stress and help you focus. They've actually done studies where these kind of exercises help people find focus. So these are helpful for kids sometimes. I've done a lot of work with juvenile delinquents where breath technique and also movement technique can help them release stress and built up anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety for kids. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety for adults, but at least we have sometimes ways of dealing with it. A lot of times younger people have no way to deal with this anxiety, and they bottle it up, and that's when it comes out in unhealthy ways. I've done work with juvenile delinquents and trying to teach them how to process their anger and anxiety in healthier ways. It's also great for PTSD. I've done some work with soldiers who, once again, don't always know how to process certain emotions, and they can't even put their finger on it or maybe name it, but they get the physical symptoms of it. And the third thing I'm going to tell you to help relieve stress, which we're not going to do here, but sleep. Americans as a whole do not get enough sleep. Sleep is very important for your body. It's important for physically and mentally. If you're not getting enough sleep, your body's going to start wearing down, and you're going to enter your day tired, and you're going to have a lot of unprocessed emotions, or a lot of unprocessed feelings. Sleep is one of the most important things we do, and as Americans, we get less sleep than almost anybody else in the world. We're literally stressful and working ourselves to death. So I will end that there. If you have any questions, you can find me through connections. You can always ask Miss Felicia how to get hold of me. But yeah, if anybody needs any kind of help, or if you have a group that you'd like to talk to, I'm very big on community outreach. I think the more we talk to each other and we figure out how to resolve these issues and how to basically work through positively through these issues, better for the community as a whole. So thank you for your time and energy. I'm going to hand this back off to the chairperson. If you breathe through your nose, I guess I should, thank you, I should have elaborated that. For those breath techniques, if you find you breathe through your nose, it's actually better for your body to breathe through your nose because you're actually filtering out a lot of impurities. Your nose is kind of built for that. Also, it causes you to breathe a little slower, and it also activates certain chemical things that are at the back of your nasal membrane that help release serotonin and certain other things in the brain. So, and that will be a calming aspect. But if you're interested in yoga, Dayton Yoga Club, you can always find us on Facebook or Google, or just message me privately if you have any questions. Yoga scares a lot of people who aren't familiar with it. They think it's a bunch of skinny people who like to bend themselves up in pretzels. And there is some of that, I'm not gonna lie. But for the most part, it's all about healthy movement and breath. So what I do and what I teach is a lot of building some core strength. As we age, nobody in here, I don't think, really has to deal with that, but as we age, myself, you start to tighten up in your joints and tendons, you lose your elasticity. That's why there's so many injuries with hips and knees, because we lose our elasticity in our hips and knees, so we don't move as well. So as we get older, certain things like yoga will help maintain that elasticity and range of motion in your joints, so you're less prone to injury. Also, studies have shown that yoga helps with anxiety, depression. Physical and mental is kind of all tied together, and sometimes we miss out on that. If yoga's not your thing, take a walk around the block. Join maybe if you like to play sports. I would suggest find maybe a community league to play some sports with. But movement is good for your body. Yeah, and you just need to find the movement that's good for you. We're very fortunate to live in a city that has a beautiful park system, beautiful riverways. It's great. I like to be outdoors. I would do a lot of stuff with Riverscape. We do every Saturday of the month. There's some sort of I know there's the first Saturday of every month through the summer, there's free yoga. I think the second or third is kickboxing or Zumba, something like that. But we're very fortunate to live in a city that has all these amazing opportunities for us to express ourselves physically. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it right there. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. As we move forward, could one of you speak to us about identifying mental health issues in our children in the community?
When we talk about identifying mental health issues in children, or in teenagers. Some of the things, and parents, you are the first line. The schools, second line. And teachers and other family members. Things, especially for depression, changes in their sleep pattern. You mentioned about sleep and how important that is. Unexpected crying or very moody. Now moodiness is something that you find in young ladies, and I'm going to say it because it's the truth. There are hormonal changes, but when it is excessive, when it is constant, there needs to be at least some medical intervention to determine whether that is just a normal change that young ladies go through hormonally, or if there is something more serious and underlying. And that's where taking your daughter, specifically to a doctor, would make, could help with that diagnosis. Not that guys don't have depression also, or have changes in, not hormonal changes, but when you see, again, the weeping or the excessive moodiness. Eating habits, a change in eating habits, weight loss, weight gain, expressions of hopelessness or worthlessness, paranoia, excessive secrecy. I mean, that is something that is a departure from what you know your child to be. Obsessive body image concerns, isolating themselves from you, from their siblings, from their friends, and just abandoning anything, any of their social groups of friends. Those are the kinds of things you see or can see with depression. As a parent of 4 children, I found that communication was key. My oldest is a boy. He's a man. We talked a lot. And he always said to me, Mom, you talk to me like you talk to my friends like you talk to me. And I said, yes, that's what adults do. If they care about children, they talk to them. And my biggest thing is about parenting. It didn't come with a guidebook, but I truly believe that our children are worth the time and effort while they're in our homes to invest in them, to find out what's going on with them. And I always talked to my children. I still do. They're grown. And now it's interesting. They call me to ask for advice. Back then it was unsolicited. But when you do talk with your kids, make your children, I'm sorry, I say kids, I'm of that generation, heading up to 70. So I say kids, but I don't mean any disrespect. When you talk with them, have an open demeanor, not be judgmental, accusatory. Those are things that will cut off communication in a heartbeat. But when they start talking about suicide, I'll share a little bit more about some ways, or I could now, some of the things to ask your kids to open that dialogue in case they're depressed, in case they have been thinking about suicidal ideation or anything like that, is to ask them, you know, you're hearing that a lot of kids are committing suicide or thinking about suicide. What do they think about that? At least that starts the discussion. Do they know anybody who's thought about that? And that kind of gets the ball rolling. What do you think about life? I mean, what kind of plans do you have for your life if you suspect that your kid there's been a change? Events and activities they enjoy. Do you all have family things coming up? Are they looking forward to those kinds of things? Immediate events, and then looking at long-term plans that they may have. Those are ways that one can identify. As a school nurse, I realized back when I did that a lot of children, they would come to me before they would go to their parents, but I would also urge them to talk to their parents or give them a call. If you think that a young person is experiencing these things, don't keep it to yourself and say, I don't want to get involved. or you're afraid that the parents are going to be angry with you. It is better to save a life and have them be angry than to have guilt or remorse because you didn't address it when you had an opportunity to do so. There are no second chances with suicide, none at all.
All right, so I'm just gonna, is it all right if I keep it real with y'all? Is that all right? Can I do that? So I'm gonna read off some words, and you let me know if you've heard these before. Crazy, bad nerves, possessed, slow, bipolar, that's the newest one right now, lazy, attention seeking. Right? Has anyone ever heard those words or used those to describe someone else? Those are words that we use to describe people that have or may have some sort of mental illness, right? So before we can start talking about the definitions, we need to change how we even talk about someone who potentially has a mental illness. So if we refer to everybody as bipolar, how do we know if someone really has that disorder? We're using that in a negative fashion. We're talking about people as having bipolar, not as someone that is bipolar. There's a difference between the two. So let's have a dialogue about how we can change how we talk about people that have mental illness.
Muriel or Sam, would either one of you speak to the attitudes, as Stephen had mentioned, the language we use and how we communicate with our children when they are young and the message that they receive when you use such language?
Yes, I'd like to thank, what's your name? Caarol, for saying when we do work with people, we have to make sure that we come in a non-judgmental manner. And working in the school environment, of course, I'm glad he brought out all these different negative images that are and words that are portrayed about people with mental illness. And we need to take away that stigma and that negativity that is associated with it, because they are hurting, and it makes the people more afraid to reach out and be open to it, even ask for help, because this kind of language is being used and this attitude is being portrayed toward people in our society that suffer from a mental disorder. And another point that was brought out, that there is a link that mental and physical illness are associated with each other, as Sam had said. I'm glad he said that, because I often come in that approach to, as I'm trying to, when I get a referral, you know, from the school administration or teachers, then trying to then communicate with that parent, and coming from that point of view and saying that, you know, I'll give an example of maybe high blood pressure, just to open up, get them to open up to receiving help for their child. Because there's no difference here. If your child had high blood pressure, you wouldn't just leave the doctor's office. So let's go through the assessment, and then, you know, because it has to, we're not just going to start services for a child just because you receive, you know, this referral. It has to line up with signs and symptoms according to the diagnostic manual and criteria that has been established. And so just being very open and just being very accommodating and flexible to that individual when they do come to you, and be careful of how you're presenting yourself. Your language, your body language, of course, speaks volumes, even when you don't even speak it.
Just a couple of quick comments. Excuse me. I didn't know, and I'm not sure how many of you know, that 2% of younger kids have depression, and 10% of all teenagers in the United States have depression. And it's an even higher level for adults. One of the things of being a military, you get judged a lot on your jobs, about how you act. And if you let someone know that you have issues like depression, or if you're suicidal or something like that, then it's going to focus on you as far as you getting promoted, as far as you getting pay raises and all of that stuff. So that's why it's important for it to be identified so it can be corrected as soon as possible, because again, it's correctable, it's treatable if it's diagnosed properly, and the earlier it's diagnosed, the better off the person is. Also, the suicide, I wrote down a suicide hotline number. Someone mentioned suicide, excuse me here. Some of these things lead people to get in a position where they don't want to live anymore. They're really ready to take their own lives. And if you see somebody like that, you need to make sure that hotline is called. And if you or myself are in a position where I feel like I'm ready to commit suicide, I need to call that hotline. And because they have professionals on the other end that is there trained to help anybody in that situation. And I wrote the number down, it's 800-784-2433. 800-784-2433. And if you know somebody, have them call that line because it can help them.
I just want to reiterate the point again about suicide and black males specifically. So before I came to Wright State, I worked at a psychiatric hospital where oftentimes black males themselves would come in having attempted suicide. So we used to think about suicide as something that black people didn't do, right? It was either something that we didn't talk about or something that we just assumed people in our culture didn't participate in. But what the research is showing now is that suicide has actually increased over 300% from the 1980s until now amongst black males, specifically with those between the ages of 15 and 25. 15 and 25, the number of black males that are killing themselves is the third leading cause of death right now for black males. Third leading cause. So there's violence, there's physical problems, and then there's suicide. So I want to reiterate the fact that you should take that number down and that you should call if you feel like someone in your circle is looking like they are thinking about themselves in a way of ending their lives. It's very serious right now.
Depression and suicide, we talk about silent epidemics. With our physical health, it's hypertension and stroke. With mental health, it's depression and suicide. Also on the computer, there's Jason Foundation, and they deal with teenage suicide. And if you can look that up, Jason Foundation, and it talks about suicide being a silent epidemic. I'm going to do something here because I found this and my heart kind of broke. The Harsh Truth of Life with Depression. And this was written by a teenage African-American girl. She took a deep breath. She counted to 3. A picture in her head of who they wanted me to be. They wanted her to be normal, happy, and kind. They never thought that this girl would be blind. Not blind by the meaning, but blind in the heart. Blinded by darkness, blinded by dark. She walks around lifeless, her heart beating, but dead. A walking corpse, she is lost inside her head. Things have no meaning, or at least not anymore. She was not how she was once before. She is one of the living, but one of the dead. A part of her is missing. She hangs on by a thread. She hung her head low, took one final bow. She stepped off the edge, saying one final vow. I will not change who I am, as hard as any of you try. This is me giving up. This is one last goodbye. And 1 in 5 children or teenagers suffer with depression. In Dayton, we have 100 and I was trying to do the math, but I'm not good in that arena. in our population, how many teenagers we have, and how many, if you think about 1 in 5 who are depressed. And this is really serious stuff, folks.
Thank you all. This is so very important because, like I said, when I go into the school system to do some consulting, either on social etiquette or the universities to do civility training, I realize how dysfunctional and very depressed and confused, or with another one of these list of mental health diagnoses that these citizens have. And when I speak to working groups, I always start with a poem, and a lot of executives will look at me and say, well, why is she reading a poem to us? We're here for leadership training or whatever it is. But I would like to share that with you because our time is getting close and we need to allow for a couple of Q&A. And I would like to say at this time that Ms. Hill definitely wants us to be proactive from this point forward to do some quarterly things with the permission of the president and move forward in collaboration and really addressing the needs. But I'd like to share this one point that I start all of my training workshops with, whether they're civility or etiquette, because it's the basics of what helps to develop our children. I don't know how many of you have heard of Dr. Dorothy Nolte, PhD. She wrote the poem, "Children learn what they live," and as simple as it sounds, it is so very true. If children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with fear, they learn to be apprehensive. If children live with pity, they learn to feel sorry for themselves. If children live with ridicule, they learn to feel shy. If children live with jealousy, they learn to feel envy. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. If children live with encouragement, they learn confidence. If children live with tolerance, they learn patience. If children live with praise, they learn appreciation. If children live with acceptance, they learn to love. If children live with approval, they learn to like themselves. If children live with recognition, they learn it is good to have a goal. If children live with sharing, they learn generosity. If children live with honesty, they learn truthfulness. If children live with fairness, they learn justice. If children live with kindness and consideration, they learn respect. If children live with security, they learn to have faith in themselves and in those about them. If children live with friendliness, they learn the world is a nice place in which to live. It is never too early to share this and teach our young people. I have been around 5-year-olds who were ready to just destroy the world and kill their parents because they were confused, because they were angry. And I always say that people can't give you what they don't have in their hearts. And when a child in school tells me that they're dumb, they're stupid, that they don't have anything to offer, they're not going to try to be as best as they could be. And oftentimes they will end up with some type of diagnosis and end up with a therapist in the school or on medication. But we don't have to wait for that. We can start as loving parents and do what we need to do as parents to provide that foundation for them, because we want them to be good citizens too. These children will have to grow up and do things that we're doing, be leaders in the communities, be CEOs of corporations and things. So mental health diagnoses can manifest themselves in lifestyles, am I correct, professionals here? When you are abused, misused, sent the wrong messages, the children live out that what am I looking for? What's that word? Self-fulfilling prophecy. And I had one student tell me, and then we'll go to the question Q&A. When I was in one of the schools, I had come back from DC to here. And a friend of mine was in one of the school districts, an administrator. She said, Caarol, I need you to go back into the school. I said, okay, so Ohio teacher's license and everything. And I was saddened because the children were so apathetic. They were unruly, not mine, in my class. They were always on task. And the principal would come and shake my hand and say, Miss Prewitt, I would just like to shake your hand. I said, why are you shaking my hand? He says, every time I pass your classroom, they're on task. He says, walk around here with me. And I walked around, children were throwing chairs. These are third graders. Fifth graders were yelling back at the teachers, disrespecting them and cursing them. And I'm like, what has happened since I used to teach fifth grade? What has happened that the adults do not come across as authority figures to them and respectful so that they can do the things that they need to do to make sure they live a quality life and be productive citizens? One student of mine was cheating on her tests. She had purple, blonde, I think it was black lipstick, and as mental health professionals, we know that's showing us and acting out. Black fingernail polish. But her friend finished her test before she did. So she sat back there. And I always encourage the students that they were great, that you can do anything regardless of how they told me their teacher or their parent told them they were stupid. And I went to the young lady because she didn't know what to do. She thought I was going to take her paper, and I went to her, I said, you know, I saw you back here looking off of Elizabeth's paper, but I have faith in you. I know you know these answers. We just went over this material. And you know what she said to me? She said, I'm stupid. I'm dumb. And I asked her, I said, who told you that? My teacher last year, significant figure in her life. Her mother told her that. And then you know what else she told me? And she looked at me so sincerely. She said, and I'm a briar. I pretended I did not know what that meant. She looked at me all confused, like, don't you know what I mean? I said, so what? You're a briar, what is that? I said, you still were born with a brain like everyone else. You're as smart as any other student in here. And I'm not going to take your paper from you, but I do expect you to finish your test. And she looked at me and tears came down her face. 5th grade. She says, thank you, Miss Prewitt. And I said, you turn your test into me because I know you can pass this test. You don't have to cheat. But she had learned somewhere that she had to do that she wasn't good enough. Some other human being told her that. Some significant other person in her life. So what we have to do is make sure that we keep ourselves in a place where we can help our young people develop into the people they need to be, the great citizens that they need to be to affect positive change in this society. Did anyone else want to make one more comment on anything before we go to the Q&A, because we need to stop at 8? Any other comments?
There's just one resource I really use and offer to families, and it's NAMI, if you've ever heard of it, NAAMI.org.
Thank you. And there's some other resource information we can share with you at the end. Mr. President, would you like to have a Q&A session now?
Thank you, Ms. Prewitt. And now, Ms. Prewitt is always teaching somebody something. That's just a teacher in her. So before I ask my question, I'm just going to say that that I was at some event about, I think it was last month sometime. I think it was a Delta event, I believe it was. It was a hat show or something, a hat show I went to. So when I was at the hat show, I needed a pen. So I said, does anybody have to take out a pen? So Miss Prewitt said, hold on for a second, I have a pen. And so she reached in her purse and she gave me a pen. So after I was done with the pen, I was trying to get the pen back. She said, no, you keep that pen. So she sent a silent message to me, make certain you have a pen all the time. And so I got the message, okay? I got the message, Miss Teacher. So I got my pen on me right now. Okay, so I have a question for Dr. Nifley. You had mentioned that there are that students, well not students, but young males. You said specifically young males regarding them committing suicide. If you, from your knowledge, if you had to force rank the top 5 reasons that you have heard and or have studied, the top 5 reasons why young men are committing suicide or have committed suicide or have attempted suicide, what would those top 5 be if you had to force rank them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, for the question. So I was just thinking it's after 7:30, my brain is shutting down, but I got it. So the number one issue for the reason why Black males commit suicide is racial trauma. So the experience of racism and discrimination that Black men have experienced in this country and continue to experience in this country have led to a state where they think less of themselves, where others think less of them, and to where their peers also think less of them as well. And so they're unable to cope, and so then they kill themselves. Another reason why is masculinity issues. So Black men are the most hyper-masculine group out of all of our male groups, which means that they're the ones that, if you think of the stereotypical male, they are the ones that do all those things and then some. So they tend to be more hyper-aggressive. They tend to be more emotionally restrictive, which means that they show their emotions less. And what we know about the comparison of the two is that if you're experiencing something on the inside, but then you don't show it on the outside, no one thinks anything is wrong with you. And so then you keep building those things in, and then finally you explode. And so either you explode by hurting others, or you explode by hurting yourself. So racial trauma, hypermasculinity, or just having what we call now toxic masculinity. That's like the new buzzword for that now. Another issue is peer pressure. So there we are living in a society now where in order to be considered a successful Black man, you need to be aggressive, you need to demonstrate all of these masculine traits. And so a lot of our peer circles are putting pressure on our Black men to do those things, to be aggressive. And sometimes, in a lot of ways, if you're not aggressive, you're seen as feminine or as not a man. So peer groups, racial trauma, toxic masculinity, if you will. Another reason why is being unwilling to ask for help. Being unwilling to ask for help. So Black men are one of the groups that's least likely to ask for help. So when it comes to mental illness specifically, we go to the emergency room. And we don't go for mental health related issues. We go because our stomach hurts, because our chest hurts, or things like that. We don't go because we're sad. We don't go because we're angry at the world or things like that. We go because of physical complaints instead of mental complaints. And what we found is that the emergency room is not the best source to get you mental health treatment, right? Because they're not there to treat you, they're there to stabilize you and to send you on your way. But we know that mental illness is a chronic issue, and it's not something that can just be stabilized in a day in an emergency room. It's something that requires ongoing treatment. So not asking for help, racial trauma, toxic masculinity, and peer influences. The last reason that I would offer is popular culture. So if you look in the media and you look at the images that are affiliated with black men, there's only a couple of things that we can do in this world based on what you see in the media, which is be athletes and to be entertainers. And so if we can't achieve either one of those things, we feel then that we are less as men. And if we feel that we're less as men, we feel those feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, low self-esteem. But not all of us can dunk a basketball. Not all of us can put together rhymes and make lyrics and do things like that. We don't realize that there's other potential avenues that we can be successful in the world. So just kind of summarize the top five things: racial trauma, toxic masculinity, peer circles, not being willing to ask for help, and popular culture and the media.
May I take a minute here and just see if you had anything to say about post-traumatic slave syndrome? Were you familiar with that? Okay. And as I studied it, I thought for sure when I mentioned lifestyle effects that manifest into mental illnesses, did you want to say just one or two words about that?
Okay, can you ask the question one more time?
For those who may not be aware, there is such a thing as post-traumatic slave syndrome. And this is a whole nother workshop. But I wanted to touch on it when we're talking about our black males and the things that they deal with every day, which you mentioned here that were manifested from the ideology and mental and lifestyles of those from slavery that's passed on to generation to generation.
So, what do I want to say about that? So, has anybody ever heard the term generational trauma? Is anybody familiar with what that means? It essentially means the ideal that the way that we cope with the experiences that we've had in this world is passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so black people specifically are carrying with them the legacy of slavery. You know, we all know what that was like. We all know that was a really bad time for a lot of people. But there are a number of coping strategies that we pass down from that experience. So I'm from the South. I don't know if people do this stuff up here, but has anyone ever heard of chitlins? Does anybody eat that up here? Chitlins? Chitlins. Yes. Okay, chitlins. So everybody's familiar with why we ate those in the first place, right? We ate that because those were the scraps that were given to us. And then we turned that into a delicatessen. I mean, it's a little gross to me, but you know, other people like it. Right? But that's an example of a legacy that we've passed down through the generations. What started off as a negative, we had to do it because there was nothing else that we could do, has now become something that we've developed into a culture. But there's been some things that we've passed down that haven't benefited us well in terms of coping with things. So an example that I gave using those 5 examples I gave before is asking for help, right? Or processing emotional experiences. So during slavery times, if something bad happened to you or to your family or to someone that you knew, you had to get up and just deal with it, right? You know, the world that they were living in at that time didn't allow them to sit and talk to someone about what was going on. You saw what happened, you had to deal with it the best that you could, and then you got back out in the field and you did what you needed to do because you knew if you didn't do what you needed to do, you were next or someone in your family was next. Now that strategy worked then for those folks, but it works less for us now, right? You know, one of the things we talked about before was emotional restriction. So the idea that we just cope with emotions by never talking about them and never expressing them. That worked for those folks then. That doesn't work as well for us now. Because when we try to not express our emotions, those things still come out, but they leak out, and then finally they explode on us, right? So either we start to hurt ourselves or we start to hurt someone else. So that's an example of a generational trauma experience where it's something that worked for us in the past, which was dealing with our emotions by bottling them up, that's been passed down through the generations, that is now affecting us now as a people, because now we're all coping with emotions by not talking about our emotions and not processing our experience.
So I just want to remind the members, if you have questions, come up over here and take the mic and ask the panel the question. While I'm waiting for someone to come up, let me ask, because I appreciate Chair Lady Hill for taking on this issue and Ms. Prewitt for facilitating it. And I know that one of Chair Lady Hill's interests is to have an initiative come out of this. An ongoing NAACP take some ownership to this. And I heard a couple of panel members speak to it, what we should be doing as parents. But can you give us a couple of good bullet points on what we can be doing in our communities, in our schools, as parents and NAACP? Because I don't think most people realize the significance of this disease. You know, in the Black community, we're hiding this as we did the AIDS crisis. And we're not addressing it. I'm glad the panel members have pointed out 1 in 5 young people have committed suicides. Dayton Daily News did 2 stories, one about a family in Beaver Creek, and the other was a student in Middletown. And so this is epidemic crisis for our young people. But in the Black community, it's even higher, and we're not addressing it. So I want to see if you will address it, but also to give us a roadmap. 2 or 3 things that you think we ought to be doing. And again, if you have some questions, come up here and take the mic.
The first thing is just please be more sensitive to the needs of others around you. Be willing to take the time to listen and be willing to speak up and take a stand for a child. I mean, I worked with children's services too, and even for my own family, it was like I'm the devil or something because I worked for them. You have to be willing to speak up for a child and give them respect. I guess the child matters now. They do have a voice. And it's like, I just think if we would just be more respectful towards children and decide that they really count now. They count as an individual. They are an individual now. And because we want to empower them at this young age to grow up and be productive. So I just say the number one thing is just be sensitive to people around you, period, so that we can offer and be available to help them and support them.
I just briefly, anybody can become depressed. It could be you, it could be me. So just piggybacking on the comment we just made, when you see it, we want to identify it as soon as possible and get some assistance for them. And I was not aware of this as well, that women are more likely to become depressed than men. I don't know why that is. And also, genetics play a part in it. I think it was mentioned earlier. If there's someone in your family that has an issue like that, your relatives are susceptible to it as well. So just keep your eyes focused, and if someone is exhibiting anger, don't take for granted or make an assumption that they're angry because they're mad at something. It could be an ill-related issue. So that's basically what I say. Just piggyback, keep your eyes open, and if you see something, identify it, make an issue to take it to where it needs to go, to a doctor.
One of the things you asked about was what can you do with your organization, and there are really good training programs out there. You can speak to that within the schools or as persons who work with teams, and maybe setting up a workshop or for a couple of weeks having a training program for us to be more aware and identifying where
Thank you. I didn't receive much positive feedback at all, and I know what that feels like. It hurts. So then we, in turn, need to keep it real, and when we're dealing with others and with children coming up, we need to be more positive, encouraging, loving. Kids need to hear that they're loved. And I think that alone is a start.
The only thing I want to offer up is that you can go to church and you can go to a therapist. You can go to church and you can go to a therapist. Oftentimes people feel like they have to choose one or the other, that you have to go and talk to your pastor only if you're experiencing some sort of emotional issue. But there are trained professionals like all these folks up here that are willing to help and have went to school and have did those things for a long time that can be helpful to you. And you don't have to lose your faith in order to seek out a psychologist or a therapist or such. So please remember that. A lot of us have faith backgrounds. I have a faith background. My faith is important to me. And so by you talking and sitting down and receiving treatment from me, you're not doing something that is anti to your faith background.
One of the things I have found that's very helpful is male mentorship because of the dysfunctional family that exists in this day and time. And how do you feel having, because the kids I've had for 30 years, when the males come in, they have not seen a positive male role model. So, and they have to be taught. So, what do you think about having a male African-American mental role model? And I want to give a plug for the youth council because I see the kids all the time and they're always talking about what an impression the adults made on them.
Thank you. That's an outstanding question. One of the things I was doing as I found out where we were going to have this program this evening is did some research on this Dayton boys preparatory academy here and found out what they actually do. They do things on learning, achievement, character, and all of that. And I don't know all of the details, but having a male role in a kid's life is so important. At Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, we have what we call a Boys to Men program, and we do the same thing in a smaller environment. We teach things like how to tie a tie, how to keep your pants up, how to address things with women, how to open doors for women, just little basic things about character, achievement, learning. We teach them about financial issues. We teach them how education. We give them lessons on what is your goal 5 years from now? What is your goal 10 years from now? Get them young. You have to get them young. And I say, as soon as they can walk, as soon as they can talk, they should be mentored. No negative impact on women at all, but having a male role model means so much in the lives of kids. And to have a man standing for a boy is just so important. And that's what this Dayton Academy, I just went online and looked and see what is done in this community by the Dayton Boys Preparatory Academy. It is outstanding. And I don't know the details of getting kids in the academy here, but if you have a young man that needs to go, I would look to this academy to see how they can help the young men.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to share one other incident with a student who was an angry black male in the school. And he had been out of school. I thought he was out of school ill. He came back and I recognized the behavior. Angry black male, he was like 6'1". He told me, because I wouldn't argue with him, I guess his other instructor argued with him. And I said, we will not waste our time, your education is too important. And I could tell he was still angry. As I walked down the aisle to pass out their worksheet, he swung. He had already threatened me and told me that he was going to call his mother and his mother was to come up to the school and cut me. Okay, as a former mental health counselor, I did not even address what he said. The students looked at me. But as I walked down the aisle, he did like this, like he was going to hit me, and before I knew it, I pulled him up and I lifted him up in the air. He was 6'1", and I just told him, I'm not the one. I'm here because I care about you. You will leave my classroom or you would change your behavior. I went to the desk, called the front office and said, I'm sending Kevin up to the office because we will not waste his time or the other students' time with him acting out in my classroom. The teacher next door must have known who Kevin was and what he was about. He was standing outside my classroom. He said, Miss Prewitt, I'll take Kevin to my classroom. He likes the subject we're covering today. I said, you can take Kevin wherever you want to take Kevin today. He went with the teacher next door, but at the end of the day, guess who came back to the classroom to see if I needed any help? He did, and I thought to myself, oh, he's going to call his mother, let me get ready, she's getting ready to come up here and file a complaint, she's going to cut me like he said, but I let him know that he was valuable and he did not have to waste his time like that. And when he came back, he did everything but said, I'm sorry, Miss Prewitt. Do you need any help? Could I help you do this? And when I went to the teacher next door, I said, is this the same kid I just lifted out the seat and sent over to? He says, yes, but no one has ever checked him like you did. I said, I didn't mean to touch him or anything, but I'm not going to allow a student to hit me first. But his attitude changed when he realized I cared about him, regardless of the behavior he had been exhibiting. So it's so important that we show that we care about them, especially our black males. There's so many angry ones out there.
Let's give it up for Felicia Hill, our chairperson, in her absence, for putting together this distinguished panel. And then for Ms. Prewitt for facilitating. Let's give it up for Ms. Prewitt. This is a very touchy subject. And at the end of the day, this is part of our core goals: inform, educate, and empower. Those are the core goals, the three core goals that drive the Dayton NAACP: inform, educate, and empower. And this is exactly what this panel has done. Let's get a panel on here. Now, I believe there was one question that was asked, and I don't see, okay, well, she's gone now, but it seemed like she wanted somebody else to address her question, but we'll leave that alone now because she's already gone. So with that, next month, the month of July, I believe our topic is going to be on housing next month. So last year we probably had about, 200-300 people in here because we were talking about the Lock Links program last month. So I don't know what our housing committee chair has on tap for this month, for next month in terms of her topic and her guest, but it's going to be centered around housing. So with that, until the next time, enjoy your summer and we'll see you next month. Thank you very much.